This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Eons of Battle, and I have gotten out every one of my Black Templar Space Marines. There is slightly over 10,000 points of Black Templar, this guy's backwards, Black Templar on this table, and it's pretty cool. This is my favorite army. It's my largest army for sure. It is the most painted models for a single army that I own easily. I don't know of that many Black Templar armies that are painted, caveat, that are as large or larger than this one. I think way back in the day, I think Blue Table Painting did a commission for a larger army, and Mini Wargaming might have amassed a slightly larger or about equal size collection of Black Templar. Fun fact, that I love watching Mini Wargaming's videos. I've watched them since like 2011, 2010. And this army was kind of in the works. It was a lot smaller than it is now. And Mini Wargamer Matt, he put out a video saying that they were working on some Black Templar content and they were looking to purchase some Black Templar armies. And I offered him this Black Templar army for sale. I took pictures, I sent him an email, and he said that was all right. They already had all the models they needed. But this army almost ended up with Mini Wargaming. Thankfully it didn't, because now I have it and I have added to it and it has grown into the monstrosity that it is now. But that was really, that was an interesting moment in the history of this army. This army had a sort of rocky beginning. I was collecting Necrons. I had a pretty good Necron army. They were still painted green. And I was like, okay, I learned how to paint on those models, learned how to put models together. I sort of learned how to create an army. So let me move into Space Marines. I think the first Space Marine box I bought was Terminators, because I was really into Space Hulk and I wanted Terminator miniatures. And I couldn't come up, I thought my Necrons, I came up with my own idea of how I was gonna do them. And I wasn't really into the lore or the history of 40K. I just saw them as cool models and I want to make my own army. And so I thought I was going to do that for my Space Marines. So I started out with rusty Space Marines. I was thinking, okay, maybe they're Ultramarines and they've been battling on this planet where the dust is blowing 24/7 and the dust has kind of scraped the paint off of their armor, which is a really cool concept. There is an image that exists of my version of that concept from way back 10 years ago, and it does not look very good, and that's why they don't all look like that. And then I thought, well, maybe they won't have all of their armor, scoured clean from the dust. Maybe it's gonna be really grimy and rusty. And I had collected a whole bunch of Tyranid bits from a friend of mine who was collecting Tyranids. And so I thought maybe that's gonna be my army. It's gonna be really weathered, rusty Space Marines with tons of trophies of Tyranids, which also would have been cool, but I did not have the skills to pull it off. And so finally I started actually looking into 40K lore, and I was reading about the Ultramarines, the Dark Angels, the Blood Angels, lots of things with angel in the name. And the Black Templar kind of jumped out to me as the most Space Marine of the Space Marines. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Everything is Gothic cathedrals and candles and skulls and reliquaries and religious imagery. And that really wasn't a part of the Space Marines. It's not really a part of any of the Imperium factions except for Adeptus Sororitas, but the Black Templar are that. When I'm looking through the 40K rule book or the Space Marine Codex and you see these weird little Gothic things in the corner, that's Black Templar imagery, and I really connected with it. And all of a sudden I started to get into 40K and the lore, and I started kind of collecting more so than building an army. I got tons and tons of tactical Marines, lots of Terminators, lots of Scouts, because back in the day, when you played Black Templar, you could take a Crusader squad, and the Crusader squad consisted of normal tactical Marines and normal Scouts taken in the same squad. There was a Black Templar upgrade frame that came with like 2 Black Templar Z torsos. I didn't end up buying any of those because I didn't have enough money to buy a box of tactical Marines and buy that Black Templar box and buy the Scouts. So I just got the regular tactical Marines and the Scouts. But that was okay. And the Crusade squads were so unbelievably bad in game. I mean, it was normal Space Marines, normal Scouts with chain swords instead of bolt guns. Chain swords because you're Black Templar, you get your close combat. And I would lose and lose and lose badly. The models would perform horribly on the tabletop. So years later, probably like 4 years ago, I decided to take all of those Crusader Space Marines and I bought jump packs because Games Workshop actually does sell jump packs separately. I'm not 100% sure that they do. I'm pretty sure that they still do. You can buy like 5 jump packs for $8. And so I bought 20 jump packs and I put them onto my Marines, and now I have a huge, humongous blob of Assault Marines, which are excellent. I really like the Assault Marines. I've given each Assault Marine a cute little skull because the Black Templar are spooky. And I really, really like my Crusader squads a lot more now that they are Assault Marines. And that is actually why all of my Assault Marines are planted firmly on the ground, because these are 5th edition Tactical Marines, not the new cool looking plastic Assault Marines, which I actually believe are $5 more expensive than the Vanguard Veterans. I don't know if Games Workshop has fixed that yet, but the Vanguard Veterans are cooler and come with more stuff. But the 5 normal Assault Intercessors, or Assault Marines, we don't have true Assault Intercessors in that they have jump packs yet. I'm assuming 10th edition is gonna drop that awesomeness on us. But yeah, I love my Assault Marines. I have 20 of them. And speaking of things that have jump packs, I also have 10 Vanguard Veterans, all armed with claws. These guys are sweet. I love them. I tried extra hard painting them up perfectly and crisply and neatly. And I really like how these guys look, all barreling at the enemy with their lit up claws. I don't even care that the old lightning claws look really, really lame because it's clearly a power fist with lightning claws attached to it, even though they're way worse in game than a power fist. They don't have the power of the power fist is lost. And I think it's just because in Rogue Trader they looked like that, and they had a different stat line, but they decided to turn it into a different weapon and have the power fist and the lightning claws move in 2 different directions. And the new lightning claws that are on the new Black Templar models, the Black Templar Sword Brethren, look dope. I really like them. And they would look cool on these guys, but I still like how these guys look a lot. My Scouts are just regular Scouts now. They are no longer part of Crusade squads, and they're great. I actually took the Scouts a lot when I was playing a lot of 40k in 6th edition and 7th edition and early 8th edition. But you know what my favorite edition is? This video's sponsor. Squarespace is the name you know for easy to build websites. I made a Squarespace website for myself to showcase some of the models I have painted along with written explanations of how I painted them. Squarespace has the option for integrated links so I can easily set up my photos to take people directly to the original video where I painted the models. Squarespace websites also have built-in comments so that anybody who sees my stuff can tell me exactly what they think about it. It's super easy. My website took about 15 minutes to construct and launch. Squarespace has great professionally made pre-built layouts that allow you to just plug in your info and be done. Or if you have something a little more specific in mind, you can customize the templates to make your website unique to you. Head on over to Squarespace for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use our code EonsOfBattle to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Well, another one of my favorite little things for my Black Templar army is my Sniper Scouts. I have 10 Sniper Scouts, and I was getting a little sick of black power armor, as you can imagine, and so I decided that these guys would actually be camouflaged, and so I painted them tan. And I actually airbrushed the Black Templar logo onto their cloaks, but it's airbrushed very subtly with brown paint. And so I just thought that was a really, really neat touch, that their camouflage still incorporates the symbol of the chapter. I really like these Sniper Scouts. I was collecting Space Marines during the Great Primaris controversy, and early on in the development of the Primaris Marines, I was a little bit bamboozled. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I was listening to a lot of naysayers be like, the Primaris Marines are a horrible cash grab, they're awful, they break all the lore, they're terrible. And I still thought they were pretty cool, but I was sort of like, yeah, they don't really seem to fit in that well. And so I decided to maybe collect Primaris Marines as a secondary army. So I'll have classic Space Marines and I'll have Primaris Space Marines. And so actually all of my Primaris Intercessors and my Redemptor Dreadnought actually are on different bases. They're on Cork Tower bases with a little bit of foliage. And I really wish I didn't do that, because now, after reading some books and reading a lot of the Primaris lore, I really like it. And I think that they actually add a really unique flavor to the Space Marines, because usually Space Marines are duty and honor and, oh, to the last man, we need to defend this capital from the orcs or the Necrons or whatever it is this week. But now that there's actually some internal conflict within the Space Marines, with some chapters hating Primaris, some chapters accepting Primaris, some Primaris are from the days of the Horus Heresy, and so they have 30k sensibilities in their head that clash really poorly with the modern horrible world of Warhammer 40,000. There's some really interesting stuff happening, and so I like my army to be a mixture of Primaris Marines and classic Space Marines. Also, I don't have that hard of a time photoshopping, like, a small model and a large model in my head that, yeah, they're about the same. Primaris Marines don't tower over normal Marines. Also, Marines in general vary a lot in size. Chapters like the Raven Guard tend to be on the smaller side of things, and chapters like the Space Wolves tend to be a lot larger than your average Marine. So it's totally fine to have Marines that are different sizes. Primaris Marines are, in general, a bit bigger, but they're not like humongous things. But yeah, one day I will have to go back and rebase all of my Primaris Marines so that I can properly introduce them to the chapter. Not looking forward to it on the Redemptor Dreadnought. This base is huge, but I will do what I must, because I was being a big silly goose back in the day, not accepting how awesome Primaris are. I mean, just look at that Marine. Look at how cool that Marine is. If this was the Marine I was buying from Games Workshop in 2011, things would be different. But instead I was buying Marines that looked like this. Not knocking this, but it's not as cool, it's not as good, it's not as big, it's not as crisp, it doesn't have as much detail. It doesn't really come with as many bits. The Primaris actually do come with a lot of bits. These guys came in theory. The classic Tactical Marine box was kind of interesting because it came with a couple of different of the Space Marine armor marks mixed in, but you can't see any of that because they hold their giant bolter up in front of their chest, so it doesn't matter what chest armor they're wearing. And I don't know, for me, it's not that big a deal. The only thing you're missing from the Primaris versus the normal Marines is that slight ball joint at the waist, but if the difference between this and this is the model sucks, I don't know. I like Primaris Marines. I have a lot of them. And speaking of Primaris Marines, let me introduce you to some of the Marines that have awakened me to how awesome some of the new units are. These Suppressors. These guys, I absolutely love them. And once again, I was feeling the Black Templar Black Power Armor fatigue. I really was not paying more Black Power Armor. It also is frustrating to work so hard to get blends and highlights of gray, and then your brain kind of mentally ignores it, because that's kind of how the black spectrum is. A beautiful blend of blue to green is amazing, and it really energizes your brain, but a really smooth gradient from gray to lightish gray doesn't do that much for you. I like how the Black Templar look, and I especially like how they look en masse. But I think each individual model suffers a little bit from the fact that the Black Templar are black. And actually, I have combated that a little bit. Classic Black Templar are black and white, but all of my Black Templar actually have tan to brown shoulder pads and color squad markings. And my lore for that is that my Black Templar have been on 200-year-long crusade against Nyx blue orcs. And in this time, their beautiful, pearlescent white shoulder pads have turned a dull brown from years and years of constant warfare and grime and dirt. And that just so happens to let me get away with not painting white, because the only color more boring than black is white. Although that's not necessarily true, because let me get back to these Suppressors. The Suppressors, I actually was a little reserved on them when they first appeared on the Games Workshop community page, because I thought that gun looked obnoxious. Obviously every gun in 40K is a little obnoxious, but I thought that looked absolutely ridiculous, especially on somebody who's meant to be flying. But having the model in hand, it actually feels right, and getting a little bit of that medieval charm that the Black Templar have into these models by painting a little stripe going up the barrel of the gun, it kind of makes it look like a jousting lance, especially since I've added a bunch of tassels to these guys. These are some of my favorite models in the army, and I've also painted them white because they fly, and so my logic is that they're like the angels. I mean, all Space Marines are, the Emperor's angel, avenging angels, but these guys are like literally the angels, and so they've been painted white because they drop down from the heavens to joust models with their huge machine gun that is painted like a medieval lance. I really love them. I have 3 of them. I picked them up on eBay because actually you can't get these guys from Games Workshop directly unless you buy the Start Collecting Space Marines, which is built off of the Vanguard Start Collecting box. But you can buy them on eBay. I don't think I pay that much for them. So I really, really, really like these guys. And I think I'm going to come up with more clever ways to not have black armor in my Space Marines. Speaking of clever ways to not have just black armor, my Centurions. Centurions might be my all-time favorite Space Marine units. And I know that they're a divisive unit, but if you're out there and you don't like the Centurions, take a look at my Centurions, because I have done some very subtle green stuff work just to heighten them a little bit, to make their heads a little taller, their shoulders stand a little prouder, their legs a little bit longer, and I think that they look absolutely amazing. I've also scraped off tons of the decorations. These guys are usually absolutely covered in decorations, but in my mind, Centurions, especially since Centurions are a more modern construct added to the Imperium, in my mind, the way the Centurions work is the Space Marines are pinned down in combat. They can't move, they're taking fire, and so a drop pod is called in and it slams into the ground and it opens up, and inside are Centurion warsuits. And the Space Marines scuttle up to it, they climb into the Centurion warsuits, and then they just walk out as just a mobile wall, just getting absolutely bombarded with fire, but they can take it. I have modeled these guys with tons of little bullet holes and damage and scuffs and scratches. Their simple 2-color Space Marine armor is worn down. You can see the metal showing underneath. And I like to think that they just walk up to the enemy and then they just dump mountains of bullets and missiles and lasgun fire into them. And then they're used up. Space Marine hops out and they continue on their mission. It's like a video game power-up. The Centurion Warsuit is a video game power-up for Space Marines, and I absolutely love it. I have painted 3. I actually bought these models as a present for myself when I graduated college. It's like I bought them the moment I graduated. I have painted up 3, and I have 3 more to do. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a video on them or not, but they are still on sprue. Oh, also they are 100% magnetized. I have all of the weapon options ready to rock and roll if I want these to be Assault Centurions or Centurion Devastators. Yeah, really, really love these models. And speaking of giant, big metal doofuses, Dreadnoughts. I love Dreadnoughts. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, because I have 3 more that aren't built and painted for this, that are ready to rock for this army. I have another Redemptor and then 2 more normal Venerable Dreadnoughts. But I love these guys. It's just so dumb that the Space Marines have kind of been brainwashed because it stinks. It is the worst thing to be stuck in a Dreadnought suit, where literally they scrape you off the battlefield, they throw you in a back-to-tank from Star Wars inside of one of these things, and then they literally turn you on to make you fight in a battle, and then they turn you off for 200 years, and before they turn you back on again. But the Space Marines have been told that it is such an amazing, wonderful honor to be entombed in a Dreadnought sarcophagus that they all long for the day that maybe they'll take a orc bolt shell to the chest so that they might be put into a Dreadnought. And it also makes sense that a human can't pilot a 4-armed vehicle like with joysticks. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, we see it now with like Boston Dynamics suits and stuff. And it's been in a ton of sci-fi movies like Avatar and The Matrix 3, where for a human to pilot something with arms and legs, they have to use their whole arms and legs, kind of like an Xbox Kinect in like a dance game. It's reading your movements. And 40K doesn't have Kinect technology, but they do have plug cables directly into your cerebrum technology. And so the only way to get something to pilot something with 4 arms is to have you be basically dead. And so the way that they've tricked people into dealing with that is the Dreadnought suit and pretending like it's a great honor. I love the Dreadnoughts. I love that spooky, weird, are we the baddies vibe of Space Marines in general. And I feel like the Black Templar are the epitome of that because, you know, where the other chapters kind of believe whatever they want to believe, the Black Templar are like, the Emperor is a god, humanity is the greatest, humanity as it exists right now in its horrible, decrepit state is the greatest thing of all time. And we are going to do everything in our power to keep everything exactly as it is. And they've been on a 10,000 year long crusade. So a crusade for Space Marines is, usually Space Marines live on chapter keeps or chapter homeworlds, and they go off on missions, and they might go on a crusade for, 25 years to hunt some orcs. But the Black Templar, the second that they left the Legion was broken up into chapters. The Black Templar chapter decided to go on a crusade. And that crusade has been going on for 10,000 years. Just Black Templars, crazy guys in black armor, driving spaceships looking for fights. That's all they do. They don't have any homeworlds. They're just madness. And that is part of why I love the Black Templar so much. One tricky thing with the Black Templar is not all Space Marine models, very few Space Marine models look at all gothic. Like, the Storm Talon gunship, it looks like something out of Halo. And I tried to make it work, adding a couple of Black Templar symbols, but I think and I don't really like flyers, so that's why I don't really have a lot of flyers in my collection. But I think if I was to do it again, I would probably use the Dark Angels flyer to stand in for a Black Templar flyer. Ooh, and another fun story from my Black Templar, as if I haven't been talking for long enough. I have a lot of bikes. I have 6 bikes in this army, and I bought these in high school, and the way I was able to buy 2 boxes of bikes and a attack bike in high school was I took a commission to paint some dude's saxophone. I had painted my flute with a starscape on it, and he thought that was super badass, and so he asked me to paint his saxophone with a starscape on it. And so I did, and he paid me enough money and literally, he gave me the money, and that day on the way home, I bought all of these Black Templar bikes. And I built them, and I painted them all up, and I love them. I would like to rebase them. I think Games Workshop still officially has bikes on these awful, horrible pill bases. And I sort of don't see that changing, because I could probably see these being phased out for the awesome new Primaris bikes, which are super cool, and I really, really love them. But yeah, if Games Workshop ever, and I might just do it anyway, because I don't really care about waiting for permission, but it happened with the Orc Bikers. I put all my Orc Bikers on, I think, the 75mm round bases, and Games Workshop said, oh, it was pretty good. And so they switched Orc Bikers from these awful pills to the 75mm rounds. So I could see these guys moving at least to the 60mm round bases. I wonder what that dude and his saxophone are up to today. Another big thing about collecting Black Templar, because my Necrons were something out of my own brain, the Black Templar were something from 40k, and so it really awakened my collector brain. I started collecting every different option of Dreadnought, and I started collecting every different option of Chaplain. And so right now, I have pretty close to a full collection of every single Chaplain model Games Workshop has ever made. I have a video actually on it. About half of them are done, half of them still need to be painted, but I am in love. The Black Templar love Chaplains. The Black Templar do not have any librarians, and for a Black Templar army, Chaplains fulfill the role that librarians have. Usually librarians keep the lore and the history of the chapter, and so for Black Templar, Chaplains do that. And I just love the Chaplains and their grim dark skull helmets and their Croziuses. I really, really like Chaplain models, which is why I have collected just about every single one that Games Workshop makes, including way back old 2nd edition Chaplain model. I even have a couple of Rogue Trader Chaplains kicking around that look terrible, but I have them because of completion points. I really like Chaplains. I like my Black Templar army a lot. I've been collecting it for a long time, and it has some of my worst and best paint jobs in it. Like looking at these 2 banner carriers. Chapter Ancients is what they're called. I don't know if that is what they've always been called, but they are now Chapter Ancients. And this is a Chapter Ancient. When my army was probably under 1,000 points, I painted this banner. And this was during the Primarisification of the Space Marines. And I mean, you know, if you kind of squint a little bit, you'll see some subtle differences between these two models. And this army will always be a mixture of old and new, and I think that that is just fine. One thing that is not just fine though about this army is there's almost no vehicles. There's almost no vehicles. Like a Space Marine army, I mean, Black Templar, it's okay to be a horde army, but I need more vehicles. I have a couple of junky rhinos that desperately need a repaint. The only vehicle I have, I'm just not even counting this. I don't like flyers, I never take in game. The only vehicle I really have is this Land Raider Crusader, which I absolutely love. I put this little steeple on top. Hidden underneath the steeple is another Black Templar logo, just in case I don't want to use this in a game for some reason. And isn't it just so awesome? The Land Raider Crusader is the invention of the Black Templars because they thought that not enough people could fit in a Land Raider, and so they ripped out all of the crazy las guns and las cannons and just replaced it with tons of bolters. And so this thing rocks up. These things, they look just like decorations, but these are actually frag grenades. And so this thing slams into a building, blasts you with frag grenades, dumps hundreds of bolt rounds, and then these little doors open up, and then the Black Templar come out. It is so cool. And isn't that some pretty wild engineering? This kit's from like 2004, and they figured out how to do that. That's wild. Yeah, this is the only vehicle I really would consider that I have. So I think my next step for my Black Templar is really to cap it all off. I'll get a squad here and there, but I desperately need more vehicles. I could go on and on and on forever and ever about the Black Templar, but I'm gonna leave it at that. I've made tons of videos painting up lots and lots of these units. So if you wanna see some really cool Black Templar stuff, check out some of those videos. And you know what else you could check out? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have tons and tons of super cool STLs, both miniatures and terrain to populate your wargaming tables. If you sign up, there's a welcome pack that includes some Dawn of War, Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Eldar terrain. We also make one extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week where we critique our viewers' miniatures and give them some helpful pointers. And we also have merch, link in the description. The Black Templar. It took so long to set them all up on this table, and it's gonna take even longer to put them away. Thanks for watching.